Welcome everyone to our review of Chapter 4, PowerPoint slides, and some emphasis of certain topics that are perhaps a little more difficult or important than the rest of the chapter, but we'll go through these and make some notes about that. So Chapter 4 is about gross income exclusions, very closely related to Chapter 3, which was about inclusions, and we remember that that everything is included except those things that are specifically excluded, and these are some of the things that are specifically under the tax law excluded on this list. Gift and inheritance is anything you receive as a gift. Now you have to be careful that if it comes from your employer, chances are it's not a gift, it's in form of compensation. And inheritances, of course, is when someone passes away and leaves you something. But those things come to the person, the receiver, and are not included in their income. So the other one that will come up is proceeds from life insurance policies. When you have life insurance, when you pay the premiums, it is not tax deductible. And so when someone receives the payment for when the person dies that is insured, that amount that is received is not included in income. Most of the others we will talk about in more detail as we get to those points. Notice the term tax-exempt interest refers to municipal interest. That means interest paid by state, local, city governments, even school districts, things like that. Any interest paid by them is excluded from income. So one of the biggest exclusions is for foreign earned income. You can exclude up to $102,100 last year, but it is pretty particular. 330 days you have to stay in that foreign country, and you have to prorate it if you're not there that entire tax year, or only for part of the tax year. So Trish works 337. She qualifies, all right, but it spans 2 years. So the income in 2017 is what we're worried about, $52,000. So notice that the time period does not all have to be in 1 year. It just has to be a continuous 330 days out of the last 365 days. So for 2017, we're looking at she is there half of the year, so she only gets to exclude half of the exclusion. So her income was 52, she excludes the 49, and so she would only report income of 2768 from her work overseas. Fringe benefits, kind of jumping around on the list of those things that are specifically excluded, usually in the form of non-cash compensation. So remember, it doesn't matter if it's cash or not, if it's compensation, it should be income. These are specifically excluded in the tax law. That's the only reason why they work. So health insurance, these types of things are part of this provided by the employer but are not income to the employee. Here's a list of what those can be. Couple of notes to make on this. You can see that your employer can help you with several things. Generally, the tax law says that these are the things we want people to do. We want them to adopt a child. We're trying to encourage that, so we allow the employer to pay for things for the employee, and the employee does not count it as income. Now, notice there's a couple of things over here with qualified employee discounts. The qualified is the amount of the discount. You can't get any more of a discount than what they would normally have to the cost of the item, or 35%. No additional cost services. That's like if you fly airplanes, you're an airline, and you allow your employees to fly for free to a place you're already flying. You can't charter a flight and make it separate, but if you are operating an airline and you let them fly space available, as it's called, or standby, that is what we mean by no additional cost services. Meals and lodging is very specific, has to be at the on-site of the employer for their benefit. So if the employer says you're going to manage this hotel, and to manage this hotel you must live in this adjacent apartment so that you're on call 24/7, and you have to eat your meals there and everything, then your meals and lodging costs would not be income to you. So the list is pretty good, and each of these is in the law. Remember, this doesn't change the overall scenario that everything you receive is included. Okay. Now there's this other rule, it's discrimination, because with these types of benefits, which an employer might be tempted to do is offer them for a few and not for everyone. If that's true, if it favors, and we're worried about the highly paid employees, then it will not be excluded for them. So that's what we mean by discrimination. It provides a higher benefit, or only provides a benefit for highly paid employees. So notice the tax consequence. If that is true, it does not change how it's treated for those that are not favored or highly paid employees. So it's only taxable to the favored or highly paid employees. Now there's a couple of things that are not subject to these discrimination rules. They're noted here in with the asterisk and in yellow. So parking and transportation, working condition, fringe benefits, things like cell phones that you provide and for the employee and say that they have to have it with them so you can call. De minimis fringe, allowing them to use the copier. We're not going to make you keep track of who used that benefit if you allow your employees to use a copier without reimbursing you or something like that. So that's what de minimis, very small fringe benefits, using a microwave in their in the break room, that kind of thing. Those kind of things are just so silly that they have to be specifically in the law, but we're not going to make you keep track of each one of those and who provided it and such. So here's the ones that we're going to spend a little more time on because they have some more extensive rules about what makes them work. Accident health insurance discrimination rule does apply, and that's the one that's kind of hard to make sure you follow without just providing the same health benefits for every employee. Okay, so you can't have one health plan for the head honchos and another health plan for everyone else. So the examples, okay, show what happens if there's non-discrimination and if they do discriminate, okay, in terms of who has to report the income on their tax return. Okay, group term life insurance also is discrimination. It has to be non-discriminatory. But here we have another issue, and that is that you can provide it for free or it's not taxable up to $50,000. That applies to everybody, whether you make a lot of money or a little money. $50,000 is the maximum that the employer can pay for the employee. Anything more than that has to be reported as income. So if you get more than that paid by your employer, then you're going to have some income on your W-2. So this is how you calculate it. You use these tables. You do not worry really about how much is actually paid for the insurance. You just figure out how much they're over $50,000. You figure out notice this is per month per $1,000 of coverage. So you have to remember that that's how you use this table. So if we provide $60,000 for each of the employees, not discriminate in favor. So Greg, 42 is non-favored. Jeffrey's 51. So we look up on the table based on age. We take 10,000 because we provide 60. Divided by 1,000, get 10 times 10 cents per month. And then always don't forget to multiply by 12 so that you can get the annual amount. And then if the employee contributes anything, you subtract that amount as well from how much should be included in income. So the only difference if for the highly paid employee, Jeffrey, is that he's older, so he goes different on the table, and the amount is different based on that table. Now, if there's a discrimination, then the employees that are highly favored or the highly paid would have income for all of the amount provided to them as life insurance. Parking transportation, $255 a month for parking. That sounds like quite a bit out here in Lancaster area, but in Boston or New York City, that's not going to cut it. You're going to pay quite a bit more than that. But as an employer, you can provide up to that tax-free, or it's not included in income. Anything more that we provide, so if we pay $400 a month for parking for the employee, then the other $145 would be included in income. This is not subject, as we noted earlier, to the discrimination rules. All right. Skipping some of the other gross income excluded, we want to talk about tax-exempt interest a little bit more. Okay. For the most part, tax-exempt interest includes, like I said earlier, municipal interest, state and local governments paying interest, but it also can include Series E and Series I savings bonds, but only under very specific circumstances. These were designed to allow people to save for education, so they are tax-free if you use them to pay for the educational expenses. So to figure it out, you have to follow this fairly complicated formula where you take the interest included in the proceeds. So you sell the bond, you get $10,000. Interest is just the amount of the interest in that $10,000. So probably $2,000 or something like that. And then you multiply that by how much you spend on education divided by how much you actually got when you redeemed the bond. So here's an example. Okay, so $12,000 is our tuition cost. Cash in series bond, we received $15,000. So to have all of our interest excluded, we would have to spend $15,000, all the principal and all the interest, which she didn't. So that's why we have to use our lovely formula. We figure out, we know that the interest is $5,000. We take it by the ratio of how much it cost us for the expenses to how much we received, okay? And then we have to then take that exclusion and then figure out if our income is higher than this phase-out range. So it also phases out as your income gets over, and you see this $78,000 for single and $117 for joint return. So it's not that high of a threshold before you start to lose this benefit. So here's a sample all the way through. Back to Erin, she got the $4,000, and then but realized her AGI is over the threshold, so it is reduced by 1,040, which is the ratio of the phase-out range, which she's over that bottom phase-out number. All right, so she would originally got $5,000 after all the reductions, okay, she only gets a 2960 exclusion, which means she includes 2040. This is all reported on Form 8815 for these bonds, and you can see how this kind of plays out. It does the same thing we just did, figures out what the ratio is of your amount you paid for education to your amount received, and then from your income phase out. And finally takes it to the Form 1040.